As mentioned at the start of the course, the focus of this particular course is running MongoDB and its associated services and monitoring and everything else in production. With that in mind, we're going to go over some best practices in relation to the MMS monitoring agent, how that should be run, how it should be deployed, what it means if it's having trouble, how to find out what that trouble is, etc., etc. The first aspect of this is, how many agents do I need? As with most production deployments, there's no definite answer to this. However, we can say with pretty much certainty that one will be too few. In any given production system, if you have just one host, you've got a single point of failure. The agent here will be giving you insight, valuable information about a production deployment. You don't want to lose that insight during an outage because you're only running an agent in one place. So therefore, the answer is going to be greater than 1. Generally, I would say the answer is 2. Having 2 agents running, only one is active at any given time, and 2 agents gives you some redundancy. So if one fails, the other one will take over and give you time to fix the original. Any greater than 2 is diminishing returns. You can deploy more than 2 if you wish. You certainly don't need as many agents as you have MongoD or MongoS instances, but certainly more than 1, usually 2, is sufficient for most purposes. Host down alerts. Why am I covering these specifically before we get into a general alerts section, which will be coming on later in the course? We'll talk about the best alerts to configure, etc. I'm just going to talk about host down alerts first because these are configured by default. You'll get a host down alert when a node goes offline. But there is a key piece to this. The key piece is that the host down alert is from the perspective of the monitoring agent. One of the first things that most people do when they receive a host down alert is they attempt to log into that host, and it may actually still be there, it may still be working, or indeed it may be part of a replica set. You log into the replica set, you check your rs.status, and it shows all members are up and healthy. So why are you getting a host down alert for a host that seems to be perfectly healthy? The answer to that question will become fairly obvious. The agent is pinging all of the hosts, and as we discussed, or as was discussed as part of Dwight's coverage, this is running on a separate host. It's reaching out, gathering information, running commands on all of these nodes. Now, for some reason, one of these stops responding, there's some sort of network partition or similar, then what you'll get is a host down alert. So let's just graphically show that. In this case, RS1 and RS2, which are members of this replica set here of 3 nodes, a primary and 2 secondaries, RS3 starts giving you a host down alert. You log into RS1, and there is communication happening between all 3 members of this replica set. These communications are not interrupted whatsoever. So from the replica set's perspective, all hosts are up, active, replicating. No known issues here, basically. RS1, RS2, RS3, they all look perfectly fine. But your agent is still sending you a host down alert, and the most common cause of this is some sort of issue between the agent and RS3 here. In other words, there's a network partition here maybe, or perhaps someone's just fat-fingered a firewall ACL, and this can no longer respond to the agent, or the agent can no longer reach out to RS3 or vice versa. So that's the most common cause of host down alerts, particularly when the host itself appears to be healthy. So this is one of the more common causes for confusion. So just thought I'd cover that here first before we get into the actual alert section and other alerts that can be configured. That brings us on nicely to the next topic, which is agent diagnostics itself. How do you figure out if there is a problem with an agent connecting to a particular host or connecting to a series of hosts? How do you figure out what exactly is wrong? Sometimes it can be a little bit opaque as to exactly why an agent can't talk to a MongoDB replica set host, for example, especially when that host itself seems to be healthy. So where do you look, and how do you figure out what's going on here? The first place to look is the local logs. When you set up the agent to run, you redirect the logs to a particular log file. So go to that log, have a look in there, and see what's actually happening. The second place is actually the agent logs tab itself. So when the agent is uploading data to MMS on port 443 over SSL, one of the things that is actually uploaded as part of that are these agent logs. In other words, what the agent saw, what it's doing. These will still be active even if there are no problems. It will report things like, I've started monitoring this host, I've stopped monitoring that host, etc., etc. And there's some sort of natural logging that goes on there. But you don't actually have to go to the local logs to figure this out. You can do it all from the MMS tab itself. So let's go and have a quick look at that. Here's our first look at the group that I've set up for this module. And actually, it's a sharded cluster consisting of 2 replica sets, but that's not important at the moment. What we're just going to do for now is cover where the agent will actually be logging things to. So if we have a quick look, first of all, in the Monitoring Agents tab, and here you see we've just got one configured. This is not a production system. It is a test demo system, so we've just got the one agent configured. It's currently monitoring 8 hosts. It's collected 471 pings, and it's reached out to get a new configuration 658 times. It's been up for a little while. It hasn't been up that long, so you may see much larger numbers here if you've been running the agent for a considerable amount of time. Also, some more informational stuff. The last ping that it uploaded and the last time it reached out and got a config are listed here in terms of the dates and times, and then the version that it's actually running on. This will be red if it was an old version of the agent that was actually being run here, and at that point you'd be recommended to actually upgrade to a newer, more recent version. But in terms of if this agent here was reporting that a host was down, how would you figure out what that host was and what was the nature of the failure? So let's go to the agent log. So here's a list of some various messages that have come in from that particular agent. No horrible errors here in this case. You might see some transient errors occasionally that don't qualify as full host down. Maybe there's a temporary issue uploading to MS, maybe things are busy, or maybe there's just some sort of network blip. So those would come up under a warning instead of info category. And then in terms of an actual error itself, once the host is actually down, you'll see an error in here, you'll see the host name, and there'll be a description here. The most common ones would be a failure to look up the host, in other words, some sort of DNS problem that you can't resolve the host name that's been put into MMS, or a connection timeout or similar if the firewall settings have been changed, or if the agent in some way or another can't communicate with that particular host. So this is where you'd look to get more information. In terms of troubleshooting, once you've had a look at the Agent Logs tab and determined what the nature of the issue might be, one of the most common ways to actually fix this, or to determine where the problem actually is to log into the agent host and then attempt to connect to the host that is reporting itself as down. Now usually, as mentioned, this will be on port 27017 or similar, and it'll be running a MongoD or a MongoS process or something like that. So you'd log into the agent host here. If you have the Mongo shell available to you, that's probably the easiest way to do it. So just attempt to connect with the Mongo shell here onto the relevant host and port and see if that actually succeeds. If it does, then it would be very strange. The agent should be basically doing the same thing using the PyMongo driver, connecting to this host on this particular port and then running a series of commands. If that is the case, if you can connect here, then it could be that this is just being extremely slow to respond to the server status commands and the other commands that the agent needs to run to actually get a ping from this host and actually gather them up. So it could be indicative of a problem that's slowing this host down to the point where the agent perceives it as being non-responsive and being down, but the host itself is actually still up. So that's one of the sort of nuances that can be missed because it is, again, the perspective of the agent. More commonly, you will attempt to run the Mongo shell, or alternatively, if you don't have that installed, you could just telnet on the port just to test it, or Netcat or any of your other favorite utilities for actually doing that, just to make sure that you can actually connect to the port and the port is open and responding. The more common result of this is that this will fail. The Mongo shell or the telnet will fail, and this is actually down. So then you're trying to figure out what is it between the agent and the host that's actually causing the problem. Could be network, could be firewall, could be a series of other things. Could be that somebody installed a new set of IP tables rules here on this local host, and you can no longer connect. Or it could be that someone has updated some other sort of, it could be UFW, which utilizes IP tables. There's a series of reasons why this might happen, as well as network. So, but this testing should at least let you narrow it down. You can always restart the agent just to double check, just to make sure there's no sort of caching problem or some sort of problem with the agent being stuck. But usually this testing will let you narrow it down completely as to exactly where the problem is occurring. So another quick quiz. How many MMS monitoring agents should you run for a production system? 1, 10, 1 for each server, more than 1, or 50?